Hello, everyone. This is Premier Chess CEO, National Master Evan Rabid, and I'm very excited to be here on episode 266 of the Premier Chess podcast, where every week we interview great chess professionals, business coaches, attorneys, many others who have found their passion in whatever it is that they do. This week we have not one, but two great rabbis on the podcast. Rabbi Elie Feder, who has his Rabbinic ordination from Rabbi Yisrael Chait, but also his PhD in mathematics from the CUNY Grad Center, and Rabbi Zimmer, who also has his ordination from Rabbi Yisrael Chait, and they actually have a very interesting podcast of their own, Physics to God. I was actually recently introduced to them by my very good friend Zev Gotkin, who has appeared on the podcast before. He's the founder of Zev Media. And for one, how are things going, rabbis?
We're doing well. We're doing well. Thank God. How about you?
Baruch Hashem. Everything is amazing, and weather's good. Was out with, our daughter and dog. And
Good.
life is great. Great to be connected here. So I guess to start, maybe one by one, you could just tell a little bit more about yourself, how you became a rabbi, how you became into physics, and et cetera.
Okay.
So
Okay, great. So I'll start off. So again, my name is Elie Feder. So I grew up in Staten Island, and from a family that had a strong balance of valuing Torah, learning. My father was a rabbi, my grandfather was a rabbi, but also being worldly. So my father was a lawyer, my grandfather was a chemist. So again, I was brought up in this type of tradition, which is a balance of the modern world together with Torah. And I was always a math guy. From the time I was a kid, I was like the math was in class, and it was only natural for me to go into math. So I got a PhD in math, and I studied something called braid group cryptography. And I also went to be a rabbi. So now I'm a math professor in Kingsborough, and I give a shir in Rabbi Chait's yeshiva. So I do kind of do both of them, and I also like to study math, physics, science, psychology, philosophy, and again, I and Aaron have been talking a lot about physics for many, many, many years. We go way back. So maybe Aaron can introduce himself, and we'll talk more about that.
sounds perfect. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Evan.
Yeah, likewise.
I always like the intellectual investigation of different things, various different things. So I liked studying Talmud and high school, college, and post high school and post college, and I study with Elie to this day Talmud through like the Brisker method. And physics lends itself to the same kind of rigorous, systematic analysis, and it really exercises your mind. And chess also always, it fits into that. I'm not, I play chess, a little bit, nothing I'm sure like you do, or the people who like generally listen to your podcasts, but it's the same kind of idea. Just I always liked, puzzles with your mind, engaging the mind, and I was curious, so I majored in physics in college. And after college, there were so many things I wanted to think about, to learn about. I didn't really want to just limit myself to one particular field. I went into commodities trading, and I used that same framework and of analysis that I got from physics and modeling from physics, and the conceptual analysis that I got from learning Gemara or Talmud through the Brisker analysis. And I used it to trade commodities markets like oil and gas and cotton and sugar. And I did that for 11 years, and then I retired. And I just have had time to like learn physics in more depth, and other sciences and math and philosophy and psychology, and just like a lot of different areas, trying to put things together, synthesize, and just understand different things. And it's just, I've been fortunate that I've had the opportunity to really think and use my mind in interesting ways.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. You already touched upon what we talk about, in a lot of podcast episodes about the transferable skills. And, for instance, yes, in your case, talking about analysis in chess, commodity trainings, physics. We've had, many finance people on the podcast already. We've had, several rabbis as well. I guess for one, we do have certainly a lot of Jewish listeners, a lot of not Jewish listeners. Could you, it's kind of a deep question in like a second, but could you talk about what Talmud is in a nutshell for a lot of our listeners that might not know?
So Talmud is the study of Jewish law that relates to all areas of a person's life. So it could relate to interpersonal, monetary matters, or just socially the way you treat somebody else. It's the laws regarding a holiday, for example, on Passover, not eating unleavened bread or having to eat matzah. It has to do with marriage law, divorce law, all areas of Jewish life. It's formulated according to the system of halacha, and the Talmud really studies that system, and it tries to find common reasons and comparisons, differentiations. It's really trying to create an abstract conceptual structure in order to formulate the law in a way that's consistent and cohesive.
So one thing that I've learned myself, in Judaism, the Talmud, et cetera, and this definitely relates to chess, is just, how there's just so much. When I first, like, for instance, heard that there was, one tractate of the Talmud, which is a, collection of, stories, essentially, that just deals with fast days, or something like that. When you think like, you could learn it like relatively quickly. And similarly, I'll hear from chess students sometimes being like, oh yeah, like, just so you know, I know chess. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a master and I know so little.
Right.
And actually, our mutual friend, Rabbi Wilds, who has been on the podcast before, one thing that he said to me that, he actually kind of related to was when he first, he went to Jewish day school his whole life. We just talked about how you're both actually from Forest Hills, Queens. But when he went to Israel for the first time and went to yeshiva, he realized how little he knew about Judaism.
Right.
That's like, I feel like in so many areas, it's just like as you go into them, there's so much depth in every, whether it's chess or Talmud or physics, it can be, and just like you study an area and you just realize there's like, it's almost infinite depth and complexity that just emerges. And often we have like these superficial views of things, but once you get deeper, you see things are connected. So yeah, it's amazing that even chess, which is in theory, made up by human beings, a game like that, still the fact that it contains so much depth and possibilities, it speaks to something about like the structure of wisdom and causality that's part of the universe as a whole that chess partakes of.
Yeah, well, the depth of the knowledge is definitely huge. So, I actually wrote a blog post just a few weeks ago about, how long it takes to, quote unquote, learn chess. But the truth is, right, yes, it takes relatively not that long to learn the rules, maybe some basic strategy. But to actually master things, no one does. Magnus Carlsen, well, now former world champion, because he left the cycle, but highest in the world. He's studying every day. There's still a lot that he doesn't know, of course. So I think that's an interesting insight. And yeah, I've also questioned, for instance, over the years, why do a rabbi like yourself, for instance, even read the Torah portion every week? Like, don't you know it from, your whole life before? But, at the same time, right, I'm sure like every single week you're, learning something new. Again, can you maybe like shed some light into that?
Right.
Definitely. There's a statement that the rabbis say there's no ein beis medrash b'li chiddush, which means there's no study hall without a novel idea, without something new. which means you could review the same exact area, but you change and you're always growing. And I'm sure, like, again, you as you grow, I'm sure in chess in any area, the more as you change and you constantly grow, there's always new angles. And I just feel, especially in the Torah, because the infinite depth that it's God given, there's always more to pick up. And you see it from a new angle, and you see a new word or some new insight, some new character, personality, some new decision which a given figure in the Torah does, and it gives you a new angle, some new question that comes to your mind, and it's said in the Talmud, that statement, but it's also, it rings true totally. Like every year I go over the same portion of the Torah, and nevertheless there's always something new which arises, and part of what is a part of the excitement of the studying is that there's always something new to pick up.
So before we get into, kind of like the meat, let's say, of the conversation about physics and everything, I guess one thing I was curious about, is why both of you chose to become rabbis in the first place. So actually, another rabbi who's been on the podcast, maybe you know him, maybe you don't, Mendy Berkerer, he used to work for Olami Manhattan. Now he works for actually the greater Olami organization. But one thing Mendy like told me, actually both like privately, but then sort of publicly on the podcast as well, is how he didn't like rabbis growing up that much, and like that's partially like what led him to actually become a rabbi. He like kind of had some that maybe he didn't like exactly relate to as much or whatnot. And then eventually like that's basically what made him like sort of become one. So what led you to actually want to be rabbis?
So I guess I'll say first, I guess I always growing up, I loved learning. I loved learning Torah. And I always wanted to get, the more I learned about it, the more I loved it, the more I wanted to know, that I was drawn to understand. And to me, I guess the position of rabbi doesn't, I don't care so much about the title, but I also, by nature, I'm a teacher, and I like teaching. I like trying to imbue the knowledge which I have, to break it down for students, and to try to give over whatever knowledge I have in simple way as possible, to try to help my students understand. And I guess in terms of teaching, being a rabbi, it's like a certain title which people recognize. And it's like I knew I wanted to go into some form of being able to pursue the wisdom in a way that would, position me to be able to pass down the knowledge which I have to my students, to different, and I taught in high school, I teach in a yeshiva now, I teach in half in college. It's just, so I guess it's kind of the position is one which enables me to be able to teach and pass on the wisdom which I have received to other people, to help enlighten them as well.
Hmm.
I'm sure you could relate to that in your teaching chess, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everyone has, a connection, of course. And, you're teaching, I always say, right, business and life skills, through the game. And, of course, you're doing that, I would say, yeah, both teaching, sort of like math and physics, but also, teaching Torah, of course. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of similar to what Ellie was saying for me. I love learning Torah. I see the value in it, and I know how much like I learned how to think, and I learned how to just be able to be successful in life because of what I learned from Torah in terms of how to analyze, but also how to lead my life. And I wanted to be able to share that with other people so they would see Torah in the way as something that's relevant in the modern world that can help a person navigate the difficulties that emerge for a person just trying to live in a modern world with all its values and all its problems. And I think the Torah has a tremendous amount to offer intellectually and how to think about things, which is really sorely lacking nowadays, how to train your mind, and also just in terms of a way of life that can give a person meaning and foster healthy relationships with other people. And the title rabbi, it's like Ellie was saying, it's just a title, but people, if you just tell them I learn Torah most of the day, okay, you're just a guy who learns Torah. But if you tell them, then they'll say, okay, maybe you know something about Torah, and they're more likely to hear it and to engage with the Torah based upon what I say. If I had that title, that's really why I did it.
So speaking of which, I already told you a little bit about me, personally. I grew up, a proud Jew, but mostly secular. That what Rabbi Wilds likes to call, a 2-day-a-year Jew. Going to shul and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Pretty much. For me, frankly, like, Torah was not cool. In fact, like I went to Hebrew school growing up, it was all about my bar mitzvah, everything.
Right. It becomes like a whole system of pressure and restrictions, and then it's presented in a way that's not appealing to a person.
And actually, speaking of which, just the other day, Rabbi, what's his name? We actually never met in person, but we've been Facebook friends for a while. The Chabad Rabbi of Hackensack, Mendy something. I'm gonna look his name as I'm talking right now for a second. But yeah, he just posted actually something the other day, which I really didn't like. And basically the idea that he was saying is, that the Torah doesn't have like good marketing, and it talked about like 16 613 mitzvot that were things to do and not to do. Rabbi Mendy Kamenker, and how people need to talk more about it. It's ways to connect to God, and have a good life, etc. It's not about like restrictions, of course.
Right. Yeah, they just the value of just it gives you a way to like lead a really good, healthy life in the modern world, which is amazing for a system that's over 3,000 years old, that it's still relevant. It can really guide you, and it creates a sense of community that is very sorely lacking in the modern world. And it just how to balance your instincts with satisfying yourself, and again training the mind. Like it's like that's the same. Similar, chess does it, but Talmud does it on an even broader range of so many more categories of just teaching you how to think properly in this world. And there's so much information out there that's true and false and lies and mistakes in thinking, and just like knowing how to think properly and to analyze is such a important element that you need to learn. And Talmud is really, just Torah in general, is one of the best ways to develop that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess like, my follow-up question that, I really wanted to ask is, I guess, look, there's a lot of great Kiruv organizations out there. For those that don't know, they're basically organizations that, connect Jews to, Judaism, essentially. Manhattan Jewish Experience, I'm very close with. I met my wife, Stacy, there. For instance, but what do you think could be, done, to make Torah more cool, let's say, and like exciting for, Jews that, may not feel connected. They might see it as, almost a chore, which is why I did, my bar mitzvah, and then, I did a birthright trip in 2008. Got involved at the Chabad house at Brandeis afterwards. Paris came there, still a dear friend and mentor. We spoke under the chuppah at our wedding. Until then, right, I had no so yeah, what could be done to, get more thinking it's a cool thing?
Right.
I think like you already mentioned, is that I think people have to talk about Torah, about Judaism, not so much about a system of rules and restrictions, and as much as it's an opportunity to give you a good life, to be able to, even the laws themselves are laws that help you gain discipline and help you build a value system in your life and live life in moderation and balance. And I think we have to talk about the positive aspects of the life of Torah, of the way of thinking of the Torah, about how it trains up people to live a good life in the difficult modern world which we find ourselves. So I think instead of being forceful about you have to do this, I think we have to kind of talk about the positive appeal which the Torah could have, and in a world which is hard to navigate, and how the Torah talk about how the Torah could help us live that type of life.
Cool. So yeah, the next question is more just to Aaron actually, but we've had many people on the podcast who left corporate jobs, including myself. I worked in enterprise tech for several years, doing sales, and then since then I started the chess company, more than full time. But it's not easy. I know many people who have very good successful careers, and the last thing they want to do is kind of quit to kind of follow their passion. So what was it like as a commodities trader, and what got you to sort of like pull the trigger and say I'm done with this?
So it was actually really fun. It was a really fun job. The first year I went in person to the financial center, but then everything shifted to electronic. So I happened to be very fortunate that I really started the year before the markets went from in person primarily to becoming electronic primarily. And in that shift, it was like, you were just really almost like a big video game online, trying to buy and sell with different markets, and numbers are flying. And in the beginning, it was before algorithms really were big, before big banks got involved in it, and it was just a fun time. There was a lot of, there was awful days when you just lose a lot of money. That just it makes you sick to your stomach. That you really just, most people don't experience that very often in life. And as a trader, you lose a lot of your money multiple times. So there is that. There's stress and anxiety that comes with it, but there's also a lot of fun and adrenaline. It's a high excitement life, which I liked. I did like, but ultimately probably shortens your life a little bit. It's really there is a lot of stress involved. And as time went on, the big banks put in hundreds of millions of dollars, hedge funds put in a lot of money, and they just developed programs and algorithms. This is even before AI. It just became very difficult for human beings to compete. And I kind of, to some degree, I lost my drive. I didn't really need to keep doing it. And there was other things I wanted to do more, and it just wasn't worth the amount of time and effort that I was putting in for what I was getting out. It wasn't really worth it anymore. And I just, I'd rather spend my time other things. Money for me, it was a means to an ends, and I had enough in order to do what I wanted to do. And I just didn't need to pursue money for its own sake endlessly, that some people get trapped in. So I was able to, retire and learn Torah and study physics and teach, do things like that.
Amazing. Well, yeah, you got to just say, right, you got to work to live, right? Not live to work. And
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank God. So and now you're making a difference. So yeah, I guess one thing that I think a lot of people, including myself, would be interested in it's just hearing how physics and Torah intersect, right? A lot of people, I think that they're almost just against each other, right? The laws of science, and for instance, the creation story, et cetera. So could you talk, I guess, on a nutshell about the kind of the intersection of the two?
Okay, well, sure. So let me start off by saying, definitely there is this misconception that Torah, God, and science have like a conflict between each other, that science somehow says God doesn't exist. And we think couldn't be further from the truth. Think that science, in fact, shows that God does exist, not in mathematical proof or anything like that, but a convincing, compelling argument. And that's what our podcast, Physics to God, is essentially. We're trying to give over that argument. And normally we try, there's a certain way we give over the argument. We thought it would be fun today if we kind of did it in a completely different way. Because we once had this analogy between chess and physics. And we thought it would be interesting if we kind of try to give over how the idea of God and physics work together, but using chess as an analogy.
I love it.
Are you ready? Okay, fine. So we kind of prepared this. We haven't done this before. We wrote this up years ago, and we decided not to publish it. But so we just we'll look through it again today. We thought it'd be fun. Okay, so we're gonna try this. Ellie's gonna start with the chess part of the analogy, and then I'll try to convert it to physics. Then in the end, we're gonna come back to God.
Sounds good.
Oh, I'm game.
Okay, great. So I guess we're talking about. Let's talk about the game of chess. Okay, actually, this is where it comes from. It comes from Richard Feynman, the famous physicist Richard Feynman, is one of the greatest physicists of the last generation. So he had a comparison of the game of chess to laws of physics, and he kind of trying to analogize what are we doing when we're studying physics. He thought of it. Imagine a person who's watching a game of chess and that doesn't know the rules of chess, and they were kind of observing many chess games, and they're trying to figure out what the rules of the game are. And he thought that's kind of what physicists do. We look at the universe, or scientists, we look at the universe and we try to discover the laws which govern the universe. And that's like the process of a scientist is trying to uncover those laws. So with that analogy in mind, we thought we're going to try to compare the game of chess and the laws of chess to expanding on his analogy to the different components of the laws of physics. Okay, so let's start out with the game of chess. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. Again, we're not experts in chess, so we're probably gonna make some mistakes or whatever. But please feel free to correct us on anything.
We'll have a good, productive conversation.
Yeah, exactly right. So okay, so basically the game of chess, you can consider it is we broke it down to three components. Okay, you have the board, you have the pieces, and all how the pieces move and all that, and then there's the initial setup, how the game, how the pieces start out. Okay, sounds good.
Sounds really good. Okay, fine. Okay, now in physics, modern physics, you have three things. You can kind of split up the universe in three ways here. So first you have the particles themselves, the fundamental particles. They're like the basic constituents of the universe, like electrons and quarks. They're things that can't be broken up into anything else. That's why they're called fundamental, the building blocks of all matter. And those are governed, the way they work, the way they move, move and interact is governed by quantum mechanics. Okay, that's kind of analogous to like the pieces in chess. There's different types of pieces that move in different ways and they interact with each other. That's one slice of the universe. The other is space-time. That's like the framework where all the particles interact with each other, what they exist in. It's like a background. We'll talk about special relativity for now. That's just like basically a fixed background of space-time where the different particles exist in and they move in space as time progresses. It's really one thing in physics, a little more complicated than chess maybe. And that's the equivalent to the chessboard. And the last thing would be the initial conditions of the universe at the Big Bang, the state which the universe started off. There's a lot of different ways the universe could have started off, even more than the number of ways you could start off on a chessboard. And the particular way that the universe started at the Big Bang is called the initial conditions of the universe. So those are the three things that correspond to three parts of chess.
So far, so good?
So far, so good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was thinking like, opening, middle game, end game, for instance.
Yeah. That's true.
There could be, many different ways to.
After we do this, your next show, you're going to develop this even further. Okay, that's going to be.
I got my homework.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now so we're talk about like I guess we could talk about these different components of the chess game. And you talk about like I guess the design of the game itself. I don't really know the history of does anyone know? I asked my son, he didn't really do. Does anyone know who invented the game? Is it where did it come
So
from?
I'm definitely not a big historian. Uh,
Okay.
my one of my podcast guests and one of the most famous chess teachers around, actually, Sunil Weeramanthri. He actually wrote a book on chess history. So I'll defer to that. But most people, I would say, say Persia. So
Okay.
like modern day Iran.
Okay.
Where it was invented.
Yes.
But, a lot of people say India, other places. So, but I'll go with Persia.
Okay. So let's say let's take the game itself and say it's an amazing game. And let's consider the different components about what kind of make it amazing, and consider these components about how, in a certain sense, they could have been different, and how that would change the game. Okay, so what do I mean? So like let's when we talk about, I guess the piece. Let's talk about how I guess the pieces. Okay, we'll talk about the pieces and the movement of the pieces, and we can talk about the rules by which govern the movement of the pieces, and those laws, the rules, would be broken down into the qualitative components of the laws and the quantitative components of the laws. What I mean by that is like, let's say you say like, I guess you could compare the way a queen moves to the way a rook moves and the way a bishop moves, and they're different qualitative. So again, the rooks only move straight, bishop moves diagonal, and the queen is both of them. So in that sense, they're qualitatively different types of movements, which each of these pieces has. But then, if you consider, for example, the king versus the queen, qualitatively they move the same. They move in all the different directions, but the difference is one of quantity. Queen moves as many spaces as he wants, but a king can only move one space. Okay, you with me? So there's distinction between like the qualitative distinct way properties of the pieces and then the quantities of those pieces. Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay, great. Now we could imagine, again, we're all familiar with the qualitative rules of the way the pieces move, but they could have been different. We can imagine a game of chess, and this is kind of the idea, these thought experiments about how would the game be if if the qualities weren't the same. Again, you have lots of pieces who move in different ways. Let's say they all move the exact same way. That would obviously make chess a much more boring game. It would be more like checkers or something like that, right? Or you could, I don't know, you could remove one of the pieces, maybe no bishops, or you could make up some new piece, which I don't know how it would move. Maybe it would move like some other shape or some other way that it would move. Or maybe you wouldn't have the law that pawns only move forward. Maybe pawns can move in any which direction. Or I don't know, you could have all different types of, maybe you could have it instead of the knights jumping over pieces, you could have the bishops are able to jump over pieces. Right? You can imagine altering the laws of the game. The qualitative laws could be different, and one could consider, well, what would the game look like if those laws would be different? Would it be interesting? Would it be as good a game? Who
Yeah,
knows?
and by the way,
Yeah,
they do. Like right now, for instance, Chess 960 has
yeah,
become
yes, that's
popular. There was actually recently a high level tournament with, all the top players in the world. So
yeah. My son was telling me about that.
so it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well,
Or
that's actually interesting. We'll get there, but that's actually changing the initial conditions. As you remembered, we said there's like the initial conditions. That's changing the original setup of the game, right? That's not quite changing how the pieces move. I don't know. Are there any variations which change how the pieces move, or is the way the pieces move that's kind of fixed in all the different games?
sort of. I mean, there are like, like Bug House, for instance, is a chess variant where you could like put pieces on the board. And actually Yasser Seirawan, a strong grandmaster, actually came up with I think it's called like elephant chess, where there's like actually an extra piece.
Right,
There's also plunder chess, where you capture
right,
a piece and it can move like that. So yeah,
right,
there's
yeah,
definitely some variants.
right,
Not
right. Okay, so great. So again, but there's a lot of different. In theory, the possibilities would be infinite, right? The possible types of laws or qualitative ways pieces would move. You can think of there being infinitely many ways, but the game of chess is unbelievable. It's such a popular game, such a great game part of what makes it great is the way that these pieces move. Whoever invented the game, it has such staying power that there's these particular laws, and the qualitative nature of these laws is part of what makes chess the game that's so well loved, right? And besides for the again, that's the way the pieces move, but then you also have the board itself. The board itself happens to be it's square. But you could imagine the board would be a triangle, or the board would be some other type of a shape, or maybe you could have even the board would be able to go from like you go on one side of the board and end up on the other side of the board, like a Pac-Man or something like that. They could imagine, but the board may not even be connected. But as the particular shape or form of the board is part of what makes the game into the game of chess.
Right. So let me just bring it over to physics. So in physics, you have an electron. Electron has a negative charge. Quarks have fractional charges. Those are electric charges. There's other types of qualitative properties, and there's rules for how an electron goes from place to place, how it interacts with light and photons. So there's these qualitative rules called quantum mechanics based upon the properties of every particle. And those rules of quantum mechanics are what's responsible and allows atoms and molecules to function in order to have chemistry. All comes from these rules of quantum mechanics. And in a similar way, the rules, space and time, how interactions are always local. That's like the whole point of space-time in a certain sense, is to create this framework, the space in which particles can interact with each other. And you don't have something, just like in the chessboard, it's contiguous. It's very important. Every space, B3 has to be connected to B2. Like these spaces have to be next to each other. If B3 could connect to E7, if they could interact with each other directly, the whole board gets screwed up if pieces aren't, the space isn't contiguous. So the same thing in physics, there's this framework of space and time governed by special relativity. It's this background which allows a logical, coherent interaction of all physical particles. And these two things, this space and time and the qualitative nature of how these particles move, if you didn't have them, you don't get a universe with all the wonderful and amazing things that we see in the universe. That's the sense we say that physics is designed, where you need certain qualitative rules. And if you can imagine different types of rules, and again, there's an infinite number of possibilities you can come up with. You don't get interesting high-ordered structures. Stars and galaxies and planets and all these things are all dependent upon gravity and quantum mechanics, all functioning according to the design of nature. That's the qualitative aspect of physics.
Right. Now you could talk, if we go back to chess and we talk about, besides for the qualitative laws, there's also the quantities, the rules, is how much the pieces move. So we could have a pawn only moves one piece, but two at the beginning. You could imagine a game of chess where a pawn moves 6 spots. It would never be able to move. Or it could have a bishop was only able to move 2 spots. Or maybe the knight, instead of moving 1 and 2, maybe it can move 2 and 3. You can imagine playing around with the quantities of the movement of the pieces, and that would totally change the game. The game is very much the quantities of how much each piece moves is a part of what makes the game. And part of, if you change those quantities, who knows what the game would look like? Arguably, it wouldn't have been as good a game. Right. So also the size of the board, and the board also. How big you can imagine a chessboard is an 8x8. It could be 1,000,000 by 1,000,000. That would be a kind of a hard game to play. Right? Or you imagine it was 4x4. It would also undermine the game. So there's part of the wisdom of the game is not only the qualitative rules, but the quantities of those rules. And if those quantities were to change, then that would totally throw off the game and it would make it into something arguably less entertaining.
Right. Now, physics is the same thing. These, just like, there's these pieces, the analog of chess pieces is, let's say, an electron, a fundamental particle. It has properties like its mass and its charge, and there's specific numbers, there's specific quantities. And it comes out that, mass would be how heavy an electron is, or the charge would be how much 2 electrons repel each other. right? The qualitative rule would be two electrons repel each other, but then there's something called the fine structure constant, which is a quantity that determines how strongly do they repel each other. And if those quantities were different, then you wouldn't have atoms. You wouldn't have stable atoms if the fine structure constant was different. Or if the mass of an electron was also different, you wouldn't have any molecules or atoms, because protons and electrons would combine to make neutrons. There wouldn't be any atoms or molecules or life or planets, things like that. So we call that the fine tuning of the constants of nature, especially in quantum mechanics, is these particles have these specific quantities that are exactly the right number, where you don't get anything interesting. Just like in chess, if every pawn can only move seven pieces, 7 pieces at a time, you're not gonna be able to play a chess game. It's not gonna work. It could literally break the game. Or if bishop only move, Ellie's game was bishop can only move 2 spaces at a time. It just takes away a lot of the strategy. You're not gonna be able to put a bishop at one side of the board and it could command the whole center. It's gonna command 2 spots. So it wouldn't take away a lot of the strategy of the game and complexity if you messed around with the quantities. And a similar thing with this space of the universe. There's a constant called the cosmological constant, which is one of the most amazing examples of fine-tuning. It was discovered in 1998. That controls the expansion of the universe. So, I guess if you imagine, it's a little bit of a strange analogy, but if you imagine, a chessboard that's expanding, where you're adding chess pieces, so if you add too many spots, the space between pieces would become less and less over time, and they wouldn't interact with each other. Likewise, you could have it contracting and things could collapse, destroy the entire game. Obviously, if the board starts shrinking, you lose enough pieces, you can't even fit the pieces on it. So these quantities that, the fine structure, the cosmological constant in physics is fine-tuned to like almost 120 decimal points, like this incredible fine-tune. Like in chess, you could add, a few more spaces on the board, you'll roughly get a chess, you get a chess game. It might not be as good as the classic chess game, but you'll get a chess game. Over here, you add, an extra couple zeros, one way or the other, from 120 decimal places. It's an incredibly small number. What's interesting, 120 decimal places and, and even 80 decimal places doesn't make a difference. It seems like it shouldn't, but it does. Even a few really makes a difference. And that's what we mean by the fine tuning of the of the space, the constant that regulates space in physics, and also the fine tuning of the quantum mechanics of the properties of particles in physics.
I just wanted to simplify or summarize is that, and this is talking about and describing discovery of the last few decades, is that there are these numbers, and again in chess it's removing 5 squares or whatever it is. Here the numbers are like this. One of these constants is 1/137.139999137. I don't know, these crazy numbers. And it was discovered that if these numbers were off by a small percentage, our universe would have no structure, have no stars, no galaxies, no atoms, no molecules, no life, no planets. It would just be a bunch of electrons and fundamental particles banging around. This is a discovery. Is like, again, just like if you throw off the rules of chess a little bit, the qualities or the quantities, if you throw off the laws of physics, just in small ways, you wouldn't have a universe that would look anything like ours. It would just be total chaos with no structures of any type forming. This is discoveries recent discoveries, which are indicating something special about the qualitative and quantitative components of our universe.
Right, and this is also something
yeah.
that scientists agree to. This is something physicists talk about. Maybe we'll talk about multiverse in a second, but like all multiverse scientists, which is becoming mainstream, they all talk about how physics is fine-tuned. It's not something that's there's a large scientific consensus about the fact that the universe is fine-tuned. The question is, what does that mean? What are the implications of that? How do you interpret that? But what we've told you so far is largely a scientific consensus about fine-tuning and design, just not the interpretation of it.
Right, and just the last component of the game of chess, and then like analogously, the universe is again the initial conditions, which is the initial setup of the chessboard, and that's like you were saying, it's 960 or Fisher's random, it's called, right? That's
there's a million names, but yes.
yeah, okay, yeah. So basically, the idea is again, there's a classical way the game starts, but then you could talk about 960, or there's 960 different ways that you could start. But that's only assuming that all the pawns are where they are, and you're just moving around the pieces in the in the back. But you can imagine the pieces starting at any which way. Who knows, right? You could just imagine plopping the pieces down on the board in any random configuration. I mean, I don't think that would be an interesting game. And who knows? You tell me with that. I mean, there's something simple about the fact that in 960, at least you have your pawn starting the same way. Imagine something totally chaotic. I don't know, would that be a game? Who even knows? What would you say? Would you imagine a game? Are there any games like that?
Yeah, I
Start the
mean,
pieces.
look, I do think it would be very interesting. One thing I look, I am a believer of is there's enough variance in chess, itself. So
Right.
there's not that much of a need, in my opinion, for others. I mean, look, at the elite level, where opening preparation is, like such a big element,
Right.
like to the point where, like games are like, mostly draws,
Right.
short, but frankly, I'm not there, so
Right.
so yeah, I do.
Do you like the regular classic game of chess the best? Do you think it's the best version of it? The original
Pretty
classic?
much. I mean, I'm not that much of a classical player anymore. I feel like I retired. And I mean, I'm kidding, but like I still play classical tournaments, but I do probably prefer like speed chess more. But no, I'm not a. I mean, look, I've played Crazy House. I played other like chess variants, but mostly for fun once in a while. But um,
Right.
yeah, there's a lot to learn in chess itself.
Right, I can
Right.
see that. Um, yeah, so just in terms of the universe, it's the same thing. The way the universe started off, it's incredibly important. And if the universe just, it's called entropy. It's the arrangement of the way the original arrangement of the universe. It's a little different. It's a little more abstract. And the analogy would be in chess is arranging the pieces differently. It turns out in physics, it's actually the way the board is arranged. It's actually the low entropy comes from the shape of the board. We haven't really discussed gravity, but gravity would be right. You're in chess, you play with a flat board. There's no curvature in the board itself. So in the universe, it's there's general relativity, which deals with the shape of the universe, and it turns out that the low entropy, the really unusual state arrangement of the universe, comes from that aspect. But in any event, it's just the initial arrangement is incredibly unlikely value. If it was just chosen by pure chance. This was calculated by physicist Roger Penrose in the 1980s. It's 1 out of 10 to the 10 to the 123rd. It's a staggering number. It's a double exponent where the exponent 10 is raised to the exponent of 10 to the 123rd. It's this astonishing number. And it's incredibly low entropy, which is really high order. And it was selected in a certain sense, or a random. That's the very question we'll discuss in a second. But that's the initial arrangement. And if had been in its most likely state, whatever the most likely state of the universe to start off in, essentially be filled with black holes. Black holes are the most likely arrangement of matter, where it's the highest entropy. The most probable state would be all black holes. And the fact that we don't have a universe filled with black holes is because the initial configuration of the universe at the Big Bang was very improbable and a very specific arrangement.
Right. So I guess putting these things together, if you look at the game of chess and you wanted to admire it and then say, I wonder how this game came about. Did it just come about by some random, I don't know, some kid just writing down a bunch of things on a paper and saying, oh, let's make a piece that moves diagonal. Let's make a piece that, let's make a board that's 8 by 8 and whatever. It's arguably that you're not going to get the complexity, the amazing game of chess without it being designed by some sort of genius or at least who had this idea, and there's a lot of thought that must have gone into it based upon, again, the different components of the game. You have the qualitative nature of how the pieces move and the quantities of how they move and the way the board is and the initial arrangement of it. All these different components of the game itself indicate that they were designed by someone or some group of people who thought it through, or maybe, again, it may have evolved over time. But again, it was designed by people who understood the wisdom of the strategy which go into the game itself. And because of the fact that you see all these different components come together to be able to yield this amazing game. And that's, again, this is in the small, compared to the universe as a whole, this is just in the game of chess. But it demonstrates a designer, someone who fine-tuned the quantities to be just right and set up the initial setup to be just right.
Right. You don't believe it. There's no reason to think. It's just that every single arrangement of pieces was tried out once and pawns were scattered around the board. It is, there was somebody intelligent who realized there has to be a symmetry in the board. You want to make the black and white have to be evenly balanced. It was specifically designed in order to facilitate a competitive game, which allows for strategy. You don't want to start it off where there's already in checkmate. There's like obvious things that the game of chess was designed and fine-tuned, and it wouldn't make everybody, right away that you want pawns to move one piece, not seven pieces, 7 spaces at a time. It was clearly done by intelligent people who, maybe they might have tried trial and error to some degree, but if somebody were to tell you that no, there was billions of versions of chess that were tried out thousands of years ago, and there was all randomly arranged pieces with different rules, and happens to be one of them survived, that was the best one, and that's how we got our game, you would say, come on, that's ridiculous. That's not the way it is. It was clearly made by intelligent people who thought through what are good principles to have in order to achieve a competitive, interesting game filled with strategy and complexity. And yeah, they might have tinkered around with it, but it wasn't trying out, billions and billions of variants of stupid variants that don't work out and are non-competitive until they finally settled on it. And in a similar way, that's kind of the question of how to interpret the one universe we see. We see one universe with fine-tuned constants of nature, with design qualitative laws, and with incredibly organized initial conditions. And the question is, how do you interpret that? Do you say there's an intelligent cause that selected the initial conditions so that we wouldn't have a universe with all black holes? We get a universe with galaxies and stars and planets. Do you have something intelligent which selected these laws of nature for the purpose of having stable atoms? And did it set these constants to these precise numbers? Because if there were any other values, then you're not going to get planets and stars and atoms and molecules. So we're saying there's one universe, and if you look around, it's ordered and it's designed and fine-tuned, and that indicates that the cause of the universe and the cause of the laws of the universe is intelligent. Just like, and you wouldn't say that there's an infinite number of other universes. That's what scientists say. Go ahead, Ellie, tell them about what they...
Yeah, the other way to explain the unbelievable design, fine-tuning order of our universe is the other explanation out there is to say that there really are infinitely many universes out there. They all exist. Again, parallel universes, like nowadays is popular in science fiction and movies and Spider-Man or whatever, but this is current scientific thinking. Many scientists, again, there's no way to prove this. It's just they say there are infinitely many universes out there, and in every universe, these numbers, these constants are a little bit different, and the laws are different, and the initial arrangement is different. And by chance, obviously, if you have infinitely many universes, you're going to happen to have one of them that just works out perfectly right.
Wow.
And obviously, if we're here, we're going to be on that one universe. So that's it, and that's our explanation. So again, it'd be like, but again, there's no way to have any evidence for such a thing. It's a theory of, again, positing, instead of recognizing the order and design and fine-tuning of our one universe, it's explaining it away by positing infinitely many unobservable parallel universes. And it would be analogous to saying, you see, there's one unbelievable game of chess. Instead of saying this game was designed by brilliant game designers, you say, you know what, there's infinitely many games out there and none of them survived, and this is the one game that just happened to survive because it was the only one which is good. That would be a ridiculous way to explain the emergence of the game of chess. So in that sense, you're saying is the laws, the modern physics, the study of modern physics leads us towards the conclusion that that there's a God who designed, who are fine-tuned, to set up the conditions of our universe to unfold into our amazing universe. And over time, but again, that's why it's saying atheists or a lot of scientists will tell you nowadays, God is an outdated idea. But on the contrary, the discoveries of modern physics point directly towards the fact that there's an intelligent cause of our universe.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, well, that was amazing. Kind of blown away. Every podcast episode we have is just so different, and so many interesting insights there, and I could definitely see, the correlation, between it all. So, you know, really want to, thank you for, getting, into the weeds, talking about, the analysis, in chess and physics, the Talmud, depth of knowledge, the Torah way of life, intersection of God and science, and getting into Richard Feynman's analogy of chess and the laws of physics, getting into a little bit of actually conversation about chess variants and the universe. There's just so much, and I'm sure we could talk for literally hours on end about the subject. But is there anything else in particular you guys wanted to mention while you're on the podcast?
I guess you could just say, like, again, we kind of talked about these ideas in quickly, but on our podcast, Physics to God, we really develop these things very slowly and carefully, and we give analogies. We don't use a chess analogy, but we use a lot of different analogies in trying to break down simply to present ideas in a slow manner. So again, this is a quick presentation, but if it at all interests anybody and they want to find out a little bit more, you can check out Physics to God. It's podcast on all podcast providers or physics.com.
Yeah, and that'll be, of course, in our show notes as well, so people could get very easy access to it. And I definitely need to listen a lot more myself to many of the episodes. And really, I'm so grateful to Zev for putting us in touch. And of course, it's a small Jewish world. You're friends with Rabbi Mark Wilds. You were on his podcast. And, I see you both know Rabbi Penny Rosenthal, who I actually learned a lot with at MJE. I was actually in the senior fellowship with him for 3 years. Actually in it now. So I've learned I got a lot from him, of course, over the years. So it's a great community, of course. I'm actually realizing now one thing that I kind of forgot to say earlier when we were talking about that happens on the podcast all the time, and I'm sure it happens on your podcast too. You have something you were going to say and then to the guest, and then you get distracted. But like for me too, like what made Judaism a little bit more like interesting and appealing to me too is realizing it's not like just about the Torah too, but it's about the community. Thank God. And at MJE, I've met not only my wife, but many other great friends over the years. I've been to Israel with them, and so much more. So, and that's the same thing with many other organizations that have been very active with as well. So, it's community. I remember actually. One time, this Chabad rabbi in Boston, who I know pretty well, Meir Zarki, I was with him and a friend, and he invited us to Shabbat dinner at his home. And my friend said, "Oh, just so you know, I'm not like Orthodox," And Meir was like, "You eat chicken?" And I'll never forget. Actually, it's funny because he happened to be vegetarian. So, it was funny. But at the same time, he understood the idea, which had nothing to do with what walk of life of Judaism he was, but it was just come on over, it's a meal.
They do, MJ does a great job, right? Rosenthal, right? Wilds, they do an amazing job. And yeah, it's the Torah is so it's broad. It deals with so many aspects of a person's life. And one of the things that's just so lacking in people's life is community. And it gives people, whether it's a Shabbat, a dinner, or it's studying together, engaging in an intellectual way, or it's prayers, or all different things. The Torah really fosters this idea of a community and building around these shared set of values that the people who feel alone and they're cut off and isolated in a certain sense. Everybody's connected so much through social media and through the internet, podcasts and things like that, but the person, face-to-face encounters between individuals that a religious, community like MJE is trying to build, that really gives a person a certain psychological sense of having a place, and it really lifts a person's spirit. And that's something that that MJE does an amazing job of helping people, bring people back to that part of their life.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, really, I want to thank you both, so much for, coming on and, giving so many, great insights, and look forward to being in touch and, hopefully, meeting in person, one of these days, as well. And, yeah, of course, the link to your podcast will be, in the show notes, as well. But, if people want to maybe reach out directly, as well, is there, what would be the best way for people to reach you?
I guess you could do physics2god@gmail.com, or on our website, there's a place you could send something, which is physics2god.com. Those are good ways.
Okay, well, amazing. Thank you so much, guys. And
Yeah.
I'm Yisrael
Okay.
Chait.
It was
I'm
great
Israel
speaking,
Chait.
man. We
Been a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Have
Bye.
a good night.